I was just about to take another sip of my coffee when she said it. My mother-in-law, sitting across from me in her pressed cream blouse, her poodle perched like royalty on her lap, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Well, Princess is more important to me than your child." The words didn't just land, they slammed into me. For a split second I thought I'd misheard. The clink of utensils against plates stopped mid-air. The low murmur of conversation faded. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock over the kitchen doorway, each second stretching longer than the last. My husband froze mid-bite, fork suspended halfway to his mouth. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say a word. Across the table, his younger sister looked from me to her mother like she'd just witnessed a car crash. Even the poodle, her precious princess, seemed to sense something shift, its little head tilting, ears twitching. I felt the heat rise in my chest, part anger, part humiliation. The smell of scrambled eggs and fresh coffee turned sour in my nose. My baby, barely 6 months old, was sleeping peacefully in his stroller beside me, oblivious to the insult hurled across the table. My eyes flicked to him, then back to her. She wasn't joking. There was no smirk to soften it, no wink to say she'd gone too far. She sat there, chin lifted, stroking that dog like she'd just made a perfectly reasonable statement. And in that stretched, silent moment, something inside me settled. A line was drawn. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to let her keep disrespecting my child. I didn't respond to her comment that morning. Not yet. I sat there, quiet, sipping my coffee like nothing had happened. But inside my mind was racing. To understand why those words landed like a slap, you need to know who we are. My name's Emily. I'm 32 years old, married to my husband Daniel for just over 3 years. We met in the most ordinary way possible, through mutual friends at a barbecue. But from the start there was something easy about us. We were both looking for something steady, something real. 2 years into our marriage, we decided to start a family. The pregnancy wasn't without its scares. I had some complications early on, and there were nights when I'd lie awake wondering if we'd even make it to the delivery room. But after 9 long months, our son Noah came into the world healthy and strong. 6 pounds, 12 ounces, with a tiny wisp of dark hair and a cry that somehow felt like a promise. Daniel's family was complicated. His father passed away when he was a teenager, so his mother Linda had raised him and his younger sister Claire on her own. By all accounts, she did a good job, put them through school, kept a roof over their heads. She was fiercely independent, the type of woman who spoke her mind without apology. Some people admired that about her. Others found it exhausting. And then there was Princess. Princess was a toy poodle Linda had adopted about 8 years ago, and from the moment that dog came into her life, everything revolved around her. I'm not talking about just she's part of the family love. I'm talking about designer dog clothes, organic hand-cooked meals, special grooming every week, and her own Instagram account with more followers than most people I know. Linda didn't just treat Princess like a dog, she treated her like her child. Correction, her favorite child. When I first met Princess, I thought it was funny. Linda introduced her with a flourish, lifting her up and saying, "Emily, meet my little girl." She wasn't joking. Princess wore a tiny pearl collar and a pink sweater with her name embroidered in gold thread. She smelled like lavender. Linda carried her in a bag like she was some kind of celebrity accessory. At first I didn't mind. Honestly, it was kind of cute, in a quirky way. I even went along with it, buying Princess a little chew toy once when we came back from a trip. Linda gushed about it for days, telling everyone how thoughtful I was. There was even a time before Noah was born when Linda and I got along really well. We'd have coffee together, talk about recipes, even team up to pick out gifts for Daniel's birthday. She told me once that she was glad her son had finally found someone with a good head on her shoulders. That meant a lot to me because winning over Linda wasn't easy. But everything changed when I got pregnant. I thought Linda would be thrilled. And at first she did seem happy. She came to the hospital when I had my first ultrasound, brought a little blanket she'd knitted, even cried when she saw the baby's heartbeat on the screen. I thought, this is going to be great. She's going to be an amazing grandma. But as the months went on, I started noticing something. It was subtle at first. A comment here, a little jab there. If I mentioned being tired from the pregnancy, she'd say, "Well, imagine being pregnant and raising a puppy at the same time." If I talked about baby-proofing the house, she'd mention how Princess never needed all that fuss because she was well-behaved. Then came the comparisons. You know, Princess was sleeping through the night at 8 weeks, she'd say, as if my unborn child was already lagging behind. Or, I never had to deal with spit up. Princess has a strong stomach. I brushed it off at first. Hormones, I told myself. I didn't want to start a fight over harmless comments. But the more time passed, the more it became clear. Linda genuinely saw her dog and my baby as interchangeable. And in her mind, the dog was winning. The shift was impossible to ignore once Noah was born. When she came to visit us in the hospital, she stayed for less than an hour because Princess needed her dinner. When we invited her over to see Noah at home, she declined because the groomer had an opening she couldn't miss. It wasn't just the absences. It was the way she talked about him when she was around. He's cute, but Princess was cuter as a puppy. You'll see, dogs are easier to train than kids. Always with this smug tone, like she was schooling me on parenting. Except her example was a poodle. Still, part of me held on to the memory of the woman who used to sit with me over coffee, who once told me she was happy Daniel had married me. I thought maybe things would settle. Maybe she just needed time to adjust to not being the center of Daniel's world anymore. But that morning at brunch, watching her stroke Princess while dismissing my son as less important, it shattered any illusions I had left. She wasn't just being quirky. She wasn't just joking. He meant it. And if she could say it once, she could say it again. And the next time it might be in front of Noah. That was the thought that stuck with me as I sat there, coffee cooling in my hand, planning in silence. Looking back, I realized the warning signs were there from the start. Little cracks in the relationship that I ignored because I didn't want to believe they meant anything. The first one happened before Noah was even born. It was my baby shower. Daniel's sister, Claire, had worked so hard to make it perfect. Pastel balloons floating in the living room, cupcakes with tiny baby footprints iced on top, a diaper cake in the center of the gift table. My friends were there, my cousins, even a couple of neighbors who had watched me grow up. It was one of those warm, noisy afternoons where you feel wrapped in love. Except there was one empty chair. Linda had RSVP'd weeks earlier, saying she wouldn't miss it for the world. She'd even asked what kind of cake I liked. But 30 minutes into the party, Claire came up to me with a strange look on her face. "Mom's not coming," she said quietly. I blinked at her, thinking maybe she meant she was running late. "Why?" She said Princess has a grooming appointment she can't reschedule. I thought I'd misheard. A grooming appointment. For a dog. Over my baby shower. I felt my cheeks get hot, but I forced a smile for the people around me. I wasn't about to let her absence ruin my day. I told myself there'd be other chances, other moments for her to be involved. When she texted me later, "Sorry I missed it, Princess looked so adorable after her trim." I typed out 3 different replies before finally settling on, "Glad it went well." Keep the peace, I thought. He's just eccentric. The second sign came a few weeks after Noah was born. It was a crisp fall afternoon, the kind where the air smells like leaves and wood smoke. Daniel had invited his mom over to meet Noah again, thinking maybe the baby shower thing had just been bad timing. We heard her car pull up and I peeked through the curtain. She was there, and of course so was Princess, sitting primly in the passenger seat, wearing a new red sweater. Daniel opened the door, calling out, "Hey Mom. Come on in." She stepped out, clipped Princess's leash, and instead of walking toward the house, she bent down and started cooing to the dog. "Who's my beautiful girl?" "As you are. Did you miss Grandma?" Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind of tone you save for someone you adore. I stood there in the doorway, Noah in my arms, waiting. A minute passed. Then Daniel walked out to her, laughing awkwardly. "Mom, you gonna come meet your grandson or what?" "In a sec," she said, still kneeling beside Princess. "She hasn't seen me all day. I need to give her some love first." It took another 5 minutes before she finally came inside. She glanced at Noah, said, "Oh, he's getting bigger," and then immediately asked if Princess could sit on the couch. I told myself she was just attached to her pet, maybe even a little nervous around newborns. Not everyone knows how to handle a baby, right? And again I let it slide. But those small moments started stacking up. Every visit had some version of the same thing. Her focus always drifting back to Princess, her attention on the baby lasting only seconds before she was asking if we had a dog bowl or a treat for her poodle. One afternoon I'd been rocking Noah to sleep when Linda stopped by unannounced. She stood in the doorway holding a new dog toy she wanted to show me. Not for Noah. For Princess. I thought this would be perfect for her. she said, turning the squeaky bone over in her hands. Noah let out a little sigh against my chest, and instead of leaning in to see his tiny face, Linda just smiled at the dog. I started to feel something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, not yet. More like a slow tightening. A knot forming in my stomach every time I knew she was coming over. I catch myself wondering, will she even ask to hold him? Will she remember his name before she mentions Princess? Daniel noticed, of course. One night after she left, he asked, "Is Mom bothering you?" I hesitated. She just seems more interested in her dog than in Noah. I know she loves him, but... He sighed. She's always been like this with Princess. Just give it time. And so I did. For months I gave it time. Kept my tone polite. I sent her photos of Noah, even when she didn't respond. I invited her to family dinners. I kept telling myself it was better to keep things smooth, that Noah would benefit from having his grandmother in his life, even if she came with a poodle-shaped shadow. But deep down I think I already knew the truth. The baby shower, the driveway visit, the countless moments where she chose Princess over her grandson, they weren't just quirks. They were her priorities showing plain as day. And sooner or later she was going to cross a line I couldn't ignore. If the early slights had been quiet, almost easy to brush aside, what came next was impossible to ignore. It started at Thanksgiving. Claire was hosting that year and she had gone all out. Roasted turkey, homemade stuffing, cranberry sauce made from scratch. The dining room smelled like butter and cinnamon, the kind of scent that wraps around you and makes you feel like home. We were all gathered around the long oak table, Noah sitting in his little baby seat next to me. He was about 5 months old then, still in that stage where he wanted to grab everything in sight. Linda arrived late, Princess tucked under one arm, a tiny bow clipped between the dog's ears. She swept into the room like she owned it, kissed Daniel on the cheek, gave Claire a quick hug, and then made a beeline for the head of the table, with Princess still in her arms. When we started passing food around, she didn't put the dog down. Instead, she reached for a plate and began cutting slices of turkey into tiny pieces. I thought she was getting food for herself. But then she set the plate down, right in front of Princess. The poodle stood on Linda's lap, daintily taking bites off a fork while Linda cooed, "Isn't this the best turkey you've ever had, sweetheart?" I tried to focus on Noah, who was getting fussy, but then Linda's voice cut through the chatter. "Maybe if your little one learned to behave like Princess, we could all enjoy the meal without so much noise." It was a dig. A deliberate one. Noah had let out a soft whimper a minute earlier. Nothing dramatic, just baby sounds. But now everyone's eyes were on me. I smiled tightly, kissed Noah's head and said nothing. Daniel's jaw clenched. Claire shot her mother a warning look, but Linda just went back to feeding her dog, acting like she'd just stated a universal truth. Some of the relatives chuckled. Those awkward, uncomfortable laughs people make when they don't know which side to take. Others kept their eyes on their plates. The air felt heavier after that. And no matter how many times I told myself to let it roll off my back, her words stuck. Thanksgiving was bad, Christmas was worse. We decided to do Christmas morning at our place. I wanted it to be Noah's first real holiday memory. Even though he wouldn't remember it, I would. The tree was decorated with gold and silver ornaments. Stockings hung over the fireplace. I'd even wrapped a few gifts from Santa, just for fun. Linda showed up with Princess, of course, wearing a red velvet dress trimmed in white faux fur. The dog had more outfit changes that month than I did. We gathered in the living room, mugs of hot cocoa in hand, and started passing out gifts. Claire had brought a cute stuffed elephant for Noah, and Daniel's uncle gave us a photo frame for a family picture. Then it was Linda's turn. She reached into her bag and pulled out a large, neatly wrapped box. She set it on the floor in front of Princess. "Merry Christmas, my darling girl," she said, tearing the paper open herself. Inside was a designer dog bed, pale cream with gold embroidery, probably worth more than our sofa. She placed it beside the tree like it was the centerpiece of the morning. Everyone murmured "wow," or "that's nice," but I noticed the glances. A couple of people looked at me, then quickly away like they didn't want to be caught watching my reaction. I smiled, or at least I made my face do the shape of a smile. Daniel stayed silent, staring at the floor. And in that silence I realized something. She hadn't brought anything for Noah. Not even a card. Not one mention of "Merry Christmas, grandson." Not one small toy, not even a candy cane with his name on it. It wasn't just that she spoiled Princess. It was that she went out of her way to make sure the dog outshone everyone else, even a baby. And in front of the whole family, no less. After she finished fluffing the dog's new bed, she finally looked over at me and said, "Oh, I'll get something for Noah next time. He's too young to care about presents anyway." That was the moment I felt something shift. Before, her behavior had been irritating, maybe even hurtful, but I could write it off as eccentricity. Now it was public. It was deliberate. And I could see, in the way she glanced around the room after making her comment, that she enjoyed having the last word. The rest of Christmas morning passed in a blur of wrapping paper and forced small talk. I laughed where I was supposed to laugh, thanked people for their gifts, and tucked Noah's new stuffed elephant beside him in his little rocker. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. I kept replaying Thanksgiving, the way she fed her dog turkey off a fork while criticizing my baby. I thought about the empty chair at my baby shower. And now the lavish gift for Princess while my son got nothing. It wasn't just a pattern, it was a message. A message that in her eyes, my child would always come second to a 10-pound poodle in a bow. And though I kept quiet, another line was drawn inside me that day. She didn't know it yet, but she was getting closer to crossing into territory she wouldn't be able to come back from. After the brunch, I didn't make any big announcement. There was no dramatic confrontation, no slamming of doors or shouting matches. Instead, I chose something far more powerful: silence. First, it was subtle. I stopped calling her just to check in. When she texted, I'd wait a few hours before replying, sometimes even a day. Her calls went unanswered more often than not, and when I did pick up, my voice was polite but clipped, as if I were too busy to talk. The first week, she didn't seem to notice. The second week, she started leaving voicemails. "Hi, Emily, just wondering if you got the photos I sent of Princess's new sweater. Call me back." 2 days later, "Hey, I haven't seen Noah in a while. You should bring him over. Princess misses him." That one made me pause. Princess misses him. Not I miss him. Not how is my grandson doing. Always the dog first. Always. So I kept pulling away. I stopped sending her photos of Noah. No more little updates about his milestones. His first laugh, his first attempt at rolling over. Those moments stayed between me, Daniel, and the people who truly cared. Weeks passed. Our days became quieter, calmer. Mornings were spent in soft sunlight filtering through the kitchen windows, Noah babbling in his high chair while I made breakfast. Afternoons were stroller walks through the park, the air fresh and still, no phone buzzing in my pocket with a text asking, "Can you send me another picture of him in that blue outfit?" Evenings were peaceful. Daniel reading to Noah while I folded laundry, no tension hanging over us from the latest drama. I didn't realize how much space she'd been taking up in my mind until she wasn't there. Without her constant commentary, without the comparisons to her dog, I could just be a mom. But she noticed the gap. And slowly, her frustration began to seep through. It started with more frequent texts. "Hey, can I swing by tomorrow?" I'd reply the next day with, "Sorry, we were out." "When's a good time to see the baby?" "We're swamped this week." Then the voicemails got longer. "Emily, I don't understand why you're avoiding me. This is about the brunch, you're being overly sensitive." I was joking, everyone knew that. "Anyway, call me back." I didn't. Claire reached out one afternoon, her voice careful. "Mom's been asking why you're not answering her." I told her maybe you were busy, but are you okay? "I'm fine," I said simply. And I was better than fine. The quiet in our lives had given me space to think. Daniel was fully on board. "If she can't treat Noah with respect, she doesn't need to see him," he told me one night after I'd let another call go to voicemail. She brought this on herself. Still, I knew Linda wasn't going to let it go forever. By the third month, her messages had taken on an edge of desperation. She'd send photos of Princess with captions like, "Your cousin's kids love her. Too bad Noah doesn't get to see her." Or, "Family is everything, you shouldn't keep him from me." Sometimes she'd try guilt. "I'm not going to be around forever, you know. One day you'll regret this." Other times she'd try charm. "Princess and I were just talking about how much we miss our favorite little boy. Come visit soon." That one actually made me laugh out loud. Talking to her dog about my son, it was like she couldn't even see how absurd it was. By now, the montage of my days without her interference had become its own rhythm. I'd watch Noah discover his hands, listen to him giggle at the sound of Daniel's voice, read him the same bedtime story 3 nights in a row because he lit up at the pictures. And not once did I feel the need to share it with her. I'd see her number pop up on my phone while Noah was napping, and instead of the usual knot in my stomach, I'd feel nothing. Just a calm certainty that she no longer had free access to our lives. The family grapevine kept me updated. Daniel's aunt mentioned over coffee that Linda had been complaining. She says you're being cold, the aunt told me. I told her maybe you just need space. But honestly, I think she's realizing she pushed you too far. Good. Let her realize it. Because this wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting Noah. Protecting the space around him from someone who saw him as less important than a pet. But the more she tried to push her way back in, the more I knew she was going to make a move soon. And when she did, I'd be ready. The silence between us wasn't just distance. It was preparation. I wasn't going to blow up in a moment of anger. No, I was going to wait until she came to me. Until she wanted something so badly she'd have no choice but to listen. And when that day came, she wouldn't just hear how wrong she'd been. She'd feel it. It happened on a rainy Thursday morning. Noah was playing on the living room rug, banging 2 soft blocks together and laughing at the sound they made. Outside, the rain tapped gently against the windows, a steady, calming rhythm. I was sipping my tea, scrolling through a recipe I wanted to try for dinner, when my phone lit up with a familiar name. Linda. For months, I'd been ignoring her calls without hesitation. But something about the timing, the gray light in the room, and the quiet comfort of the morning made me pause before hitting decline. The call went to voicemail and almost immediately the alert popped up. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Her voice was different this time. Not sharp, not passive-aggressive. Kiki. Almost small. Emily, it's me. Please, can you call me back? I really need to see Noah. I miss him so much. I know I've said things, but... Her breath caught like she was holding back tears. Please, just call me. For a long moment I just sat there, the phone still in my hand, staring at the rain on the glass. This was it. The shift I'd been waiting for. The months of silence had done their work. She wasn't just annoyed anymore. She was desperate. And desperation was the perfect stage for what I had in mind. I waited until Noah was napping before I called her back. She answered on the first ring. Emily. Yes, I said, my voice calm, measured. There was a pause, then a rush of words. I'm so sorry if I hurt you. I want to see my grandson. I've been thinking about him every day. I don't know what I was thinking at brunch. I understand, I said, cutting in gently but firmly. And you can see him. The relief in her sigh was almost palpable. Oh, thank you. Today. Tomorrow. I can come right now. Tomorrow morning, I said. 10 o'clock. Here at the house. She agreed instantly, almost tripping over her words in her eagerness. I could picture her, pacing her kitchen with Princess at her feet, planning what to wear, maybe even thinking about what peace offering to bring. But I wasn't thinking about gifts or apologies. I was thinking about control. That night, after Noah was asleep and Daniel had settled in with a book, I pulled out a small project I'd been working on quietly for the past couple of weeks. It was a simple frame, black wood, clean lines, nothing flashy. Inside was a neatly printed list titled Family Priority List in bold at the top. 1. Noah 2. Daniel 3. Me 4. 5. Extended family 6. Friends 7. Neighbors 8. The mailman 9. Princess the poodle 10. Linda. It was petty. And perfect. I'd kept the list subtle enough that at a quick glance, it might seem like a harmless little joke. But the placement of her name was the real sting. Lower than her own dog. Lower than almost everyone else in our lives. I found the perfect spot for it, on the console table in the entryway right at eye level. There was no way she'd miss it when she walked in. The rest of the preparation was quieter, more deliberate. I decided exactly how I wanted the morning to go. When she arrived, I wouldn't rush to the door. I'd let her wait outside for a minute, just like I'd been made to wait in the driveway while she doted on Princess. Inside, I made sure Noah's toys were neatly arranged, his little play area clean and inviting. I wanted the focus to be on him, his space, his presence, and the fact that she hadn't been a part of it for months. I put a fresh pot of coffee on the counter, but only 2 mugs. One for me, one for Daniel. She'd get an offer of water, not out of cruelty but as a subtle reminder. Guest status. I even thought about what I'd wear. Not dressed up, not trying to impress. Just comfortable, confident. The kind of look that says, I am perfectly fine without you here. The morning of her visit, I was up early. I took my time with breakfast, played with Noah, even read him a story while the rain from the day before left everything outside glistening. At exactly 10:03, her car pulled into the driveway. Right on cue. I saw her through the window, hair done, makeup perfect, a small wrapped box in her hands. Princess was in the passenger seat watching through the glass. I waited until she rang the bell. Then I counted to 15 before opening the door. Hi, I said, stepping aside. Her eyes darted instantly to Noah, who was sitting on the rug, gnawing on a teething ring. Oh, look at him. He's gotten so big. She took a step toward him, but then, she stopped. Her gaze had shifted. Landed exactly where I knew it would, on the console table. The family priority list sat there, framed and undeniable. I watched her eyes scan it, her mouth part slightly, her brow crease. She read it again, slower this time. And when she got to her own name at the very bottom, beneath Princess, the color in her face changed. For a moment she didn't speak. Then, in a voice that was tight around the edges, she said, "Is this supposed to be funny?" I smiled. It's just a little reminder of how priorities work in this house. Her gaze flicked to me, searching for some sign that I was joking. There wasn't one. I didn't push. I didn't explain. I just let the silence stretch until she turned her attention back to Noah. She crouched down, tried to coax a smile out of him, but he stared at her blankly. Months without contact had done their work there too. She wasn't a familiar face anymore. I could see the realization flicker in her eyes, that she'd missed moments she could never get back. First laughs, first babbles, the way his hair curled just above his ears. All gone without her there to witness them. Daniel came in from the kitchen, coffee in hand. "Hey, Mom." She straightened, adjusting the gift in her hands. "I brought something for him." "That's nice," I said, taking the box and setting it on the coffee table unopened. "He's in the middle of playtime right now." Her lips pressed together, but she said nothing. The visit was short. She stayed just long enough to watch Noah play, to make a few awkward attempts at conversation, to realize that the warm welcome she'd expected wasn't coming. Every so often her eyes would flick back to the console table. I knew she was thinking about the list. I knew she was remembering her own words at brunch. By the time she left, the rain had started again. I walked her to the door, thanked her for coming, and closed it softly behind her. I stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of her car pulling away, feeling a quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. This wasn't about being cruel. It was about clarity. About showing her, without a screaming match or a single raised voice, exactly where she stood, because of her own choices. And if she ever forgot, that list would be waiting. The rain had stopped sometime in the night, leaving everything outside slick and glistening in the soft morning light. Inside, the house was warm and still, carrying the faint scent of coffee and baby lotion. I had everything exactly the way I wanted it. Noah was in his playpen in the living room, surrounded by his favorite toys. The plush giraffe from Claire, the stackable rings that he'd recently learned to topple over with one determined push. I dressed him in the soft blue cardigan my mom had knitted, the one that brought out the deep hazel in his eyes. He looked like a picture. My picture. At exactly 10 o'clock, I saw her car pull up through the front window. Even from a distance, I could tell she dressed for this. Cream-colored blouse, gold earrings, makeup carefully applied to look effortless. And of course, Princess was with her, sitting in the passenger seat like she was being chauffeured to some red carpet event. She got out, gift bag in hand, and walked up the path to the door. Her heels clicked against the pavement in sharp, precise beats. She didn't knock right away. She rang the bell, short and decisive. I didn't rush. Instead, I turned back to Noah, who was chewing on one of the rings. "Almost done, buddy," I murmured, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. The bell rang again. I waited another 10 seconds before walking, slowly, to the door. When I opened it, she was standing there with a smile she'd clearly practiced in the mirror, the kind that's meant to erase months of tension. "Emily," she said brightly, leaning forward slightly as if to peer past me into the house. "Oh, I've missed you too so much." I stepped aside. "Come in." She moved past me into the entryway, and right on cue, her eyes went to the console table. The frame was there just as I'd left it. Black wood, crisp white background, the bold heading, Family Priority List. I'd polished the glass that morning so it caught the light perfectly. Her gaze skimmed down the list quickly at first, then slower, like her brain had stumbled over something unexpected. Noah's name at the top, then Daniel, me, on and on, until near the bottom Princess the Poodle. And below that, at the very end, Linda. She froze. Her mouth twitched, not quite a frown, not quite a smile. What is this? She asked, voice light but edged with something sharper. I shrugged. Just something I put together. Helps keep my priorities clear. The corners of her mouth stiffened. Below, the dog? I met her eyes. I thought you'd appreciate the consistency. For a moment we just looked at each other. I didn't have to say the words out loud, she heard them anyway. Your own rules, your own ranking. You taught me this. She tried to recover quickly, setting the gift bag down on the coffee table. Well, she said with a forced little laugh, I suppose we all have our sense of humor. But her eyes kept flicking back to the frame like a tongue probing a sore tooth. I didn't invite her to sit right away. Instead, I turned toward Noah, who had started fussing. Hang on, sweetheart, I said to him softly, kneeling down to fix the strap on his cardigan. I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to finish so she could swoop in with her grandmotherly affection. But I took my time, adjusting his clothes, handing him a toy, even crouching beside him to point out the little giraffe again. She'd done the same to me once, standing outside, giving all her attention to Princess while I waited with my newborn in my arms. I wondered if she recognized the mirror I was holding up to her now. When I finally turned back, she was still standing near the console table, her arms crossed loosely over her chest. The easy confidence she'd arrived with was gone, replaced by a kind of restless energy, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, glancing at Noah like she wasn't sure if she was welcome to approach. You can say hello to him, I said finally, nodding toward the playpen. Her smile came too quickly, like she'd been waiting for permission. She crouched beside him, cooing in that sing-song voice she used with Princess. Oh, my big boy, look at you. Noah looked at her, blinking, then reached for his teething ring instead. The absence of recognition was clear. She laughed awkwardly. He's shy today. He's just not used to seeing you, I said evenly. It's been a while. That landed. I could see it in the way her eyes flickered, the way her smile faltered for a heartbeat before she covered it. She knew exactly how long it had been. Every week she'd spent on the outside looking in. Daniel came in from the kitchen then, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down beside me and took a seat. Hi, Mom. She glanced up at him, clearly expecting a warmer reception. Hello, Daniel. You've been keeping busy, I see. Yeah, he said, sipping his coffee. A lot of good family time. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment, then moved back to the framed list in the entryway. I could almost hear her thinking, was this really necessary? Did I deserve to be ranked last? And that's when the silence stretched, not awkward but heavy. The kind of silence where words aren't needed because the message is already clear. I let it sit. When she finally broke it, her tone was softer. I suppose I haven't been as involved as I should have been. I didn't rush to reassure her. I just said, we noticed. She looked at Noah again, and this time there was something different in her expression. Not just guilt, but awareness. The kind that comes when you realize the door you thought was always open might not swing so easily anymore. After a few more minutes of polite conversation, she stood. I should get going. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Daniel walked her to the door and I stayed in the living room with Noah. From my spot, I could see her glance once more at the console table, at her name at the very bottom of the list. She didn't comment on it again. He didn't have to. When the door closed behind her, the house felt lighter. Daniel came back in, sat down beside me and said, that was something. I smiled faintly. She needed to see it. And she had. Not in a screaming match, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet, undeniable way that leaves no room for argument. She'd seen her place, not the one she believed she had, but the one she'd earned. And from the look on her face, I knew she'd never forget it. For a moment after she stood there staring at the family priority list, it felt like the whole house had gone still. No noise from outside, no distant hum of a passing car, just that thick, weighted silence. Linda turned back toward me and I could see it, the way her composure cracked around the edges. Her jaw worked as if she were about to say something, but her voice didn't come right away. When it did, it wasn't steady. This is childish, she said, but even as she tried to make the words sound dismissive, her tone was brittle. You really think this is fair? That you can just put me at the bottom of some list? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. It's not about the list, Linda. It's about how we got here. She gave a short, incredulous laugh that didn't match the redness creeping up her neck. Oh please. You've been avoiding me for months. I've been reaching out, trying to make peace, and this, she gestured toward the console table, is how you respond. Daniel's voice came from behind me, calm but firm. Mom, you've been reaching out the same way you always have, on your terms. This is about more than one brunch and you know it. Her eyes flicked to him, searching for a softer landing, but his expression didn't give her one. I said I was sorry, she tried again. I was joking when I made that comment. You were serious, I said evenly. And even if you weren't, you said it in front of other people. You've been showing us for a long time where your priorities are. I just put it in writing. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but then she closed it again, pressing her lips together. The silence that followed was heavier than before, but now it wasn't tense on my end, it was controlled. I could feel Daniel's steady presence beside me, his agreement clear without a word. Noah dropped one of his toys and let out a little squeal, breaking the moment. I leaned down to pick it up, brushing my hand over his soft hair. My focus was on him, not her. That shift wasn't lost on Linda. She cleared her throat, glancing toward the door. Well, I should probably get going. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Her voice was polite, but it carried something else. A resignation maybe, or the faint sting of realizing the visit hadn't gone at all how she'd pictured it. Daniel moved first, standing and walking her toward the entryway. I followed a few steps behind, Noah still on my hip. At the door she hesitated. For a second I thought she might try one last time to smooth it over, to offer some version of an apology she thought I'd accept. But instead she just looked at me, her eyes scanning my face as if she was trying to measure whether she'd lost me completely or still had a sliver of ground left. Thank you for letting me see him, she said finally, her voice softer now. I nodded. You're welcome. It wasn't a bridge. It wasn't even a truce. It was just a line in the sand. Daniel opened the door and she stepped out into the cool air. I watched her walk down the path, Princess trotting obediently at her side. At the car she paused, adjusted the dog sweater, then got in without looking back. When the sound of her engine faded down the street, Daniel shut the door and leaned against it for a moment, exhaling. Well, he said, that was something. I set Noah down in his playpen, watching him reach for his giraffe. It was necessary. Daniel crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me, pressing his chin lightly to the top of my head. I'm proud of you. I let myself sink into that for a moment. His warmth, his steady heartbeat, the quiet reassurance in his words. It had been months of biting my tongue, holding back, waiting for the right time to make the point that needed to be made. No. I'd made it. Not by yelling. Not by sinking to her level. But by holding up a mirror and letting her see exactly what she'd built with her own actions. The rest of the day unfolded quietly. We played with Noah, made lunch together, went for a short walk in the crisp air. But every so often, my mind replayed little flashes from the visit. The flicker in her eyes when she saw her name at the bottom of the list, the way her voice tightened when she called it childish, the fact that she left without her usual self-satisfied smirk. She might not admit it out loud, but she'd gotten the message. And maybe, just maybe, she'd think twice before ever trying to rank my child beneath her dog again. That night, as I was getting Noah ready for bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Claire. Mom called me. She didn't say much, just that the visit was eye-opening. He sounded different. Like she knows she messed up. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling the smallest tug of something that wasn't quite forgiveness but wasn't pure anger anymore either. I typed back, we'll see. Because that was the truth. This wasn't about one victory or one perfect revenge moment. This was about setting the tone for the future. About making sure Noah grew up in a space where he was valued, respected, and never made to feel like an afterthought. Linda could either step up and be part of that world, or stay on the outside looking in. The choice was hers now. As I tucked Noah in, I thought about how different the air in our house felt compared to those months when her presence loomed over every interaction. Lighter. Freer. Hours. Daniel came in and stood beside me, watching Noah's slow, steady breathing. Do you think she'll change? he asked quietly. I shrugged. I think she'll try at least for a while. But if she doesn't, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. He nodded, slipping his hand into mine. Good. Because we've got our priorities straight. I smiled at that. Yes, we did. It wasn't a reconciliation. It wasn't the kind of story that tied up in a neat bow with hugs and forgiveness. But it was a shift. A turning point where the power she used to hold over us broke quietly and completely. And even if she never said it, I knew she'd remember the look of that list for a long, long time. You can love your pets. You can cherish them, care for them, even treat them like family. I understand that I've had pets myself. But no matter how much you love them, they should never come before someone's child. A child isn't just another name on a list. They're the future. They're a life you help shape, protect, and nurture. And when someone shows you, not once but over and over, that they're willing to place a pet above that child, you have a responsibility to set boundaries. That's what I did. I didn't scream, I didn't insult, and I didn't try to win an argument. I simply made it clear with actions, not just words, what my priorities are. And now she knows exactly where she stands. So here's my question to you. If you were me, would you let her back into your child's life? Or would you keep your distance? Think about it for a second. And while you do, don't forget to like this video if you think the lesson needs to be heard. Subscribe to Justice Echo so you never miss a new story, and share your own experiences in the comments. Tell your story not just for me but for everyone who reads it. You never know who might be going through the same thing, and your words could be the one thing that helps them see their situation more clearly. I'll be reading. And so will the rest of this community.